là, c'est un peu tendu. Donc ce serait mieux, toi, soit le 13 après-midi ou le 14. Ou alors la semaine après.
Dans les donc semaine 16, 17, c'est ça, je commence à 16. Pardon, je 17.
17.
Je peux faire 19 ou pas?
Ouais. Oui, bah, il y aura. Oui, c'est bon. Quelle heure?
Je vais prendre les trois et puis non, je vous parce que oui, oui, après je pense qu'il y a 30, calculer une demi-heure, on va calculer une demi-heure pour traverser Paris, donc vers 11h.
Oui, si tu veux. Ouais, je note à 11h, puis tu me confirmes.
Oui.
19,
oui. Je veux dire 19 et bon.
Mais ok.
Oui. Bah, c'est juste pour les images, oui, il y a des trainings pour les Ikea ou des je me rappelle bien, il y avait sur l'ensemble la cérémonie. Merci beaucoup. Merci. I can't wait to come back to class. Merci. Vous avez bien mangé à midi, hein?
Non, mais il y a eu de l'œuf.
Ah oui? Ah oui. Tout à fait.
Alors, très bien. I'm honored now to present you our last but not least speaker. ClaireCHESNEAU began a ClaireCHESNEAU began her academic journey at the University of Paris-Nanterre, where she completed a master's dissertation on Gandhāran toilet trays. Subsequently, she pursued a doctoral research under the guidance of Pascal Ballet and Henri-Paul Francfort, focusing on the circulation and transfer of images in Gandhāran and Bactria, with a particular emphasis on the iconography of Eros. Alongside the research, ClaireCHESNEAU is also involved in teaching art history and ecology of antiquity at the same university. She will tell us about reception and adaptation, the last being, I think, said the Melinda Pana creation itself. Reception and adaptation, I said, of a very intriguing figure, the one of Eros in the Gandhāran, receptacle of numerous influences. It's your turn.
Thank you. So, as you can see, I have taken the liberty to modify the original title given in the program. So we will discuss about the derivative images of Eros, the spread of Western themes and adaptation to Oriental aesthetics in Taxila and Butkara. So images of Eros were very popular in the Mediterranean world, and the width of iconographic production is linked to the complexity of the god of love. It is related to a wide range of iconographic themes and appears on a wide variety of media, making the image of Eros perfectly suited to diffusion. So identifying and interpreting Eros is not easy, as can be seen from the images associated with Eros in Taxila and Butkara. So these images open up the vast question of Greco-Roman gods and the relationship between Mediterranean and Oriental civilization, a question I am addressing in my doctoral thesis. And it goes without saying that this is still a work in progress, and I am presenting you today the current state of my research. So the usage of images of Greco-Roman god in Gandhāran exposes the introduction. So the usage of these images exposes the introduction of the divinity and the translation that may have been made of its iconographic characteristics, and also the adaptation of its roles and attributions in a different environment. So in this sense, the archaeological sites of Taxila and Butkara are well suited to a study of these themes. Despite their obvious different functional characteristics, I have chosen these two sites in particular because they have been the subject of extensive excavation and publication, and above all, because they have yielded a large number of images linked to Eros. So on the basis of the respective excavation report, I catalogued 18 objects from Butkara and 13 from Taxila, mainly from Circap, which may represent Eros or be related to his iconography. And the majority of these objects date from the 1st century AD, and this list, of course, is not exhaustive. So as we know, Butkara 1 in the Swat Valley comprises a monumental complex in use from the 3rd century BC to the 10th century AD, which includes a sacred space dominated by 2 large stupa, a surrounding wall, as well as monasteries. And Taxila, in the now Rawalpindi district, was a city at the crossroad of major trade routes, and it comprises 3 cities, Beermond, Sierkap, and Siersuk. It's mainly in Sierkap, in the urban environment, that small objects can be found, presenting iconographic themes directly linked to Eros. So we will examine these first before presenting themes that could derive from the iconography of Eros, particularly from Butkara, where we find mainly sculpted schist relief. These 2 sites could therefore reflect 2 different ways of adapting and using the same images. So among these themes, Eros and Psyche appears twice in Taxila, on a gold brush dated to the 1st century BC or the 1st century AD, and on a cornelian seal dated to the 1st century AD. However, in both cases, none of the figures are winged. On the brush, the 2 figures are holding each other, and the seal representing Eros and Psyche has a similar posture, but a small figure who looks like Eros is added next to Psyche. Parallels can therefore be drawn, and in fact, the famous group in the Capitoline museums, winged Eros and Psyche, are depicted hugging and kissing. In this iconography is quite similar to the terracotta figurine from Seleucia in Tigris. Also, they are less close to each other. Eros and Psyche are shown hugging on the Taxila examples too. So these iconographic similarities make it possible to identify Eros and Psyche despite the absence of wings. This absence of wings could mean that the artist was more concerned about the theme of love that we can recognize in this everyday object than the mythological theme of Eros and Psyche. Nevertheless, these seem to imply an understanding of the meaning and probably the provenance of this iconographic theme and scheme. So another theme is Eros asleep. It appears twice in Taxila on a medallion and on a gold earring from the 1st century AD. And the iconographic theme is the same in both cases. Eros is lying on a flower. The representation on the earring on the left is more elaborate and complex. It is associated with the lower part representing an amphora whose handles are formed by 2 children who can be identified as Eros riding a sea monster. So the sleeping Eros is a common theme in the Greek world, also it appears less often in a flower. It can be found on a Greek bronze mirrors and also on silver vases emblemata from the 3rd or 2nd century BC. And these include 2 pairs of dishes and bowls belonging to the Al-Saba collection in Kuwait and are thought to have come from Bactria. On the second one, Eros wears jewelry on his arm, wrist and ankle, as this is the case in Taxila. So the craftsmen who produced this ware were therefore familiar with Bactrian Hellenism, and the sleeping Eros motif would have reached Bactria as early as the 2nd century BC, and then Taxila. So Eros is also associated with the aquatic world on 2 occasions on Sierkap, as we have just seen on the ear pendant, where he is riding a sea monster, and also on a toilet tray, where he appears carried at arm's length by a Nereid, seen from the back, and riding a sea monster. So the Nereid is riding a sea monster. On the ear pendant, the position of the Erotes is reminiscent of the Erotes represented on two pairs of clasps found in Telia Tepe. So you have here one example. So in Telia Tepe in northern Afghanistan, where Erotes are riding two dolphins. Then the iconographic pattern of the toilet tray can also be seen on a godware of Hellenistic art, on a silver casket from Taranto, where a nereid is also seen from the back, but without Eros, for example. So these themes directly linked to the iconography of Eros are therefore found only in Taxila and in an urban context. As we shall see now, it cannot be applied to the representations of Erotes guirlandophores. So we have selected among many 2 and 3 examples of Erotes guirlandophores for each site. In Taxila, 2 frieze fragments from Kalawan and Dharmarajika show a similar pattern. And the fragments from Butkara are distinctive in that they are carved on both sides, indicating that they were reused. In the case on these fragments, side B is a gem depicting a scene with the Buddha or theme related to Buddhism in 2 or 3 registers. And side B on this other fragment is the base of a statue. From the state of preservation of these 2 first reliefs, we can assume that the theme of possible Erotes guirlandophores was the first use, and that the Buddhist themes were chosen for a second use. So the Eros guirlandophore motif is a common theme in Buddhist decorative vocabulary. It was already known in the Greek and Roman world and may have come from the West via trade routes, but it may also have spread to Gandhāran from Bactria, where the Greek tradition was already well established. So the garland motif, as I will discuss now, has a particular resonance in Buddhism, as it featured on the offering hung on the stupa by worshippers, and was held in place by brackets, some of which depict figures, winged or otherwise adopting gesture or attributes that led me to link them to Eros. So we'll be talking here about derived type that are open to discussion. And about the bracket or stupa peg. So these brackets were originally a simple support attached at regular interval to the stupa that later took the form of winged dedicant holding fruit or even flowers. And for this study, I have selected 7 stupa brackets found in an archaeological context in Gandhāran that could bear the image derived from Eros. So the winged figure on this bracket emerged from a lotus flower and held an offering. Interestingly, this figure depicted on this bracket on the left could be identified as Harpocrates, the child god often compared with Eros. However, in this sculpture, the boy places his index and middle fingers on his lower lip, and his ring and little fingers are folded in the palm of his hand. This gesture, as you can see on the image on the right, is attested in the Gandhāran art. Male figures making this gesture in the presence of the Buddha can be interpreted as a sign of fear and joy. So the Buddhist significance of this theme seems all the more likely given that a bronze image of Harpocrates was found in Taxila, in the center of my diapositive, is dated to the 1st century AD. And in this bronze image, Harpocrates has only his index finger placed over the lip, and is shown wearing the pshent, the Egyptian crown. So identification with Harpocrates is therefore unquestionable in Taxila and remains uncertain in Butkara. So this brief study of the bracket shows that the Eros guirlandophore found on the stupa, whether on a bracket bearing a wheel garland or represented on a sculpted frieze, could be understood as an adaptation of the Indian ritual of worshipping the stupa with flowers. And as Carol Bromberg explained it on her article, The Puto and Garland in Asia, published in 1988. So in this way, the brackets may have led to the introduction of sculpted frieze with Eros guirlandophore. So one may also wonder about the significance of the presence of Eros on another frieze from Butkara 1, and on this frieze of the entablature of the cornice of stupa number 14, lion protoms alternate with eagles and erotes. So these winged erotes are depicted standing, one on a lotus flower and the other with a sword in the hand. So this is a theme that we wish to explore in depth, asking ourselves to what extent it was chosen to form part of a particular iconographic pattern, of an iconographic program. So Eros is also attested in the company of bird. However, birds are one of his favorite prey, and this hunter's attitude can also be seen on the Taxila seal impression, where a figure attempts to catch the bird. So in Taxila, 3 statuettes, 2 in stone and 1 in copper, show the boy holding a bird, reminiscent of the Skyphos aux Amours in The Treasure from Bonheur, where several erotes appear, including one holding a bird not found for a tree, perhaps alluding to the Dionysian world. So the bunches of grapes and the bird on the Butkara bracket is also recalling the bronze appliqué from Takhti Sanguine in Tajikistan, which were intended to decorate a box and which represented bird, bunches of grapes, and erotes playing musical instruments. All these represent abundance and fertility as well. So as this theme of Eros and the bird requires more in-depth research, I will not elaborate on it any further than I will on the last theme because of my uncertainties. So now we'll discuss the winged figure referring to Eros and Buddhist scenes found in Butkara. So I have identified 3 jump fragments with a similar iconographic pattern composed of 2 superimposed registers, one representing an architectural structure housing the Buddha, and the other representing a couple placed under an arch or pediment, above which 2 winged figures are depicted on either side. These 2 winged figures could be associated with the god of love simply because of their association with the embracing couple. So still at Butkara, we have listed 4 other fragmentary reliefs with a winged figure in flight approaching Buddha, who is depicted in the center of the scene. Again, further research is needed on this theme. So to sum up, these are 2 sites that are difficult to compare because they have different uses and functions, but because of their major position in Gandhāran art and the number of objects recorded, I have chosen to compare them in order to observe the way in which the images of Eros are interpreted. So at Butkara, only architectural sculptures in schist were so far recorded, whereas at Taxila there were more supports and material. pieces of gold jewelry, toilet trays, architectural relief, statuette in bronze, copper and stone, and seal. At Butkara, the iconographic theme are limited to Eros guirlandophore, winged male figures associated with Buddhist scenes or in form of a bracket. At Taxila, Eros is accompanied by Psyche or asleep in a flower or riding or accompanying sea monster or holding a garland. So to conclude, the study of these two Gandhāran sites thus testifies to the integration of the image of Eros in a process of transfer and interpretation. It also offers the possibility of demonstrating the multiple forms that this adaptation can take. And we see this particularly in Taxila and Butkara, where images derived from Eros are used in a different context and for different purposes. In Taxila, and more particularly in the urban era of Stirkap, these objects, intended for personal use, were designed to adapt to the taste and lifestyles of lay people by incorporating typically Greco-Roman images whose meaning, or at least provenance, was known a priori. In Butkara, in a religious space, the aim was to adapt an image that corresponds in whole or in part to the function and symbolism of the monument. It seems that the images directly linked to the iconography of Eros are the result of residual presence of Greeks and imported objects. And we can also ask to what extent the use of characters and iconographic themes derived from Eros reflects choices linked to the function of the monument and its place in the urban organization. To what extent it reflects choices linked to the taste or need of the people for whom these productions were destined. It is therefore a question of the understanding of the image of Eros by artists, craftsmen, and patrons. In our case, the starting point is the same, Eros. Each production responds to different needs, whether for personal or public use. So the symbolism of the image, closely linked to the iconographic themes, is also different. In Taxila, we find mainly typically Greek images, a direct testimony to the local perception of Mediterranean civilizations, while in Butkara we find images whose Greco-Roman origin is more difficult to recognize, but in this case the iconographic characteristics of Eros would have been considered sufficiently clear to be included in the production in question. All this suggests two mechanisms for adapting the iconography of Eros, and these are questions that I would like to ask in my future research. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for this presentation of a lovely motif. With such a study, I think you got a very large work to do. We can meet Eros in different form on sculpture in Gandhāran. On other sites in Gandhāran, there is winged people everywhere, and it's very nice you present us this piece from Butkara. I think too that Eros are the garland bearers Eros are more ancient than the other sculpture. But Fasana don't speak about the one which was made before. In other case, he can say because of traces on the sculpture. This one is the first one. This one is the second one. For this one, so far as I know, he don't say anything. But I think too that's the way. And what has to do this image of love in Buddhism? We can ask for it. In fact, do the monk make the choice between love and Buddhism, or is love a part of Buddhism? Is it even a link with the birth at the same period of religion, which speak of love more West? We can ask it. And do you have any question or comment about that? Yes.
Sorry to speak
Please.
again.
Yes.
Thank you for this presentation of an apparently simple but in fact quite complex question. Eros in Gandhāran, and not only in Gandhāran, is a big theme and quite complicated. I have just for beginning a small detail about the capital, Eros and Psyche. The date you put is 3rd century BC. So no, it is a Roman copy later. Maybe the original was of this period. But the group exhibited in the museum is later. So this is just one detail. In Butkara, there is something quite interesting. It is the corniche with the Eros on the flower and Eros with spear is exactly comparable to the margin of the Noinula tapestry. And Fatshena is dating this to the 1st century, and the Noinula in Mongolia, in a big burial, kurgan, is from the 1st century too. And there Eros is represented in color. And the origin is Roman, actually. Some painting of Pompeii are giving the prototypes for the 1st century for this shape of Eros. And this is something very special and different from the guirlande bearers. The guirlande bearers, who appear on the Roman sarcophagi, are more decorative, more like a decorative rhythm and pattern that we can find in some sites in Central Asia. So this is a difference you know, of course, but you have not developed here. So maybe there is a potential in this place. And what you absolutely correctly said about the function of the jewelry, is something different, because the object supporting the image of Eros, if they are jewelry, because there are more erotes on toilet trays, for instance, each time maybe the function and the intention of the artist or of the patrons could have been different. So I mean that you are on the right way, but there is still a lot of work to do, Claire.
Yes. Thank you.
Another question, please.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, how does that fit into the broader frame of your PhD research? If I understood correctly, it's like it would be one chapter dedicated to the Gandhāran material and maybe some other chapters dedicated to the history of the motif in the more Mediterranean parts.
Yeah, in my PhD is centered on Gandhāran and Bactria, and in order to understand the iconographic itinerary, I have to make a comparison and to study other area like of course Greece and Rome, and also the Black Sea, for example. Yeah.
Nice. It reminds me of a PhD that was recently defended last year by Lily Selati in the US on the trajectory of Heracles, asking the question when Heracles is no longer himself, and looking at the distinction between Vajrapani and Heracles and Heraclean figures, and that's it's a nice echo to her research.
Thank you.
Another question. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Just, I was thinking when I saw the jewelry with the motif of Eros, I was thinking about the one of the medallions from Bagram with the depiction of Eros. Yeah, and it's actually absolutely the same, kind of the same motif of there, so maybe it's worth it to have a look into that.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, important information is 3 years ago, the Pakistan archaeology team, they found about mural painting, including Eros, in Abbas, China. They published the archaeology report book in last year. If you missing it,
Well, sorry.
Abbas, China, in Swat Valley, they have found the mural painting, including Eros, the mural painting in it. It's very unique.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. Yeah, maybe we'll discuss it later. Yeah. So I will check this. Thank you very much.
Any question? So it's time to a faraway speech. C'est un doux.
Je la vois sur le...
Ouais, c'est parce qu'elle est encore...
Elle est morte, la souris.
Ça y est, c'est bon. So, existence of metalworking in Gandhāran obviously imply the providing of metallic raw materials by extraction and treatment or by remelting, and the real investment of all workers required to achieve such activities. Professor Zemaya Terzi, who honored us by opening the colloquium, showed us through examples from ADA a very interesting investigation about metalworking, specific use of distinct metals, on the way different craftsmanship, each with its own techniques and constraints, can meet to achieve religious decoration at different scales, and from craftsmanship to artistry. That implies the reality of discussions on collaboration between trades. I lost a part of my notes. So. Thank you. Oh, very nice. Thank you very much. Metal, notably silver, had been also used to make money, and Dr. Olivier Bordeaux showed us by cognitive numismatic approach how objects explain the way dye engravers and game engravers prepared their work, realized it, correct it, and adapt it to different populations living in Gandhāran during Indo-Greek and Saka period. These artists made choices in their work, and by the way give some clue about a part of their own identity. Study of Monet showed us realities of the existence of artists whose work is at the first stage of a mass production, often resulting in diffusion of associated political and religious representations. Dr. Ashwini Lakshminarayanan has interrogated the representations of built monuments in Gandhāran sculpture. This image reflection between architecture and work that represent it has placed us in front of a kind of resonance process whose sound reach us and evoke ancient changes in religious practice and thinking. Study of images gave us a window to the old world, and by using results of digitization work between Heidelberg University and Deer Museum in Chagdara, Dr. Jessie Pons and her team have very well cleaned the dusty part of those windows, not really easy to reach. By this way, she obtained the clearest image of sculpture found in the south of Swat Valley, and in fact at a very pivotal geographic point for studies of Gandhāran art. Describing some stylistic features, she had been able to precise the probable characteristics, profiles of some workshops in the sector, and confront them with other sites in Swat Valley and Peshawar Basin. Our basic documentation is difficult to reach by the way of its quite considerable dispersion too. From this point of view, numbers of museums endeavor to make objects they conserve more visible, and renew their presentations in confronting them with more recent archaeological studies. That's the way the curator of section Afghanistan-Pakistan in Musée Guimet section in Musée Guimet, Nicolas Engel, showed us with new regard documents that have been placed under his responsibility by comparing them particularly with work discovered in the north of the Swat Valley, proposing to refine their dating. There are so much things to say, and my modest contribution is to consider the choices made by artists for the ornamentation of sculpture as more relevant to classification than they have been to date. By pointing out some features, recognitions of artists' habits must be possible, but a longer-term work is necessary to reach the goal may be realized. Time will tell. Time is one of our subjects of work, and it's also a matter common for all researchers. In the case of Messainak, it was too challenging to say what could be said before the beginning of mine exploitation. Vaidegibris, who worked there during the season, offer us the possibility to know more about results of this survey. Indeed, some more recent archaeological excavations are still awaiting their final publication. Through the presentation of selected objects, Vaidegi provided us with preliminary outcomes of her study, aiming to contextualize works from this site within the broader context of Gandhara production. Since rediscovery by archaeology of Gandharan art, time has passed, technologies has evolved, and allow us today to penetrate more than ever at the heart of materials used by artists. Dr. Angela Chang has presented us a very fine study, that's the word, she made with all her collaborators on objects in Howard Museum's collection concerning lime plaster, or I don't know, not stucco, chemical compositions of the modelings. That's another example of where museum tends nowadays to revisit documents that they dispose of, this time by using the most advanced technologies. She showed us the way chemical composition comparative analysis give clues to determinations of origins of material objects and grouping of workshops. Dr. Monica Lopez-Poit also utilized results provided by advanced technologies while cross-referencing them with information from other fields of expertise. Basing her work on famous studies relating to the process of realization of sculpture, she conducted us to take into account multidisciplinary approaches to sustain our comprehension of the way artists once worked and emphasize interest of ethnology in this matter. Furthermore, she proposed to discern some religious implication behind the choice of the material. Dr. Julia Forgione also offered us a dive into the art of material, focusing more precisely on pigments, and we have had a look even beyond this concrete reality by examining the colors and the origins of materials from which they are derived. She enlightened us on the reasons for choices made by artists, the transmission of artistic knowledge, the economic background conditioning artistic production, and the symbolism hidden beneath the surface.
Dr. Birgit Angelika-Schmidt presented a renewed view on material conserved from a long time in the Museum for Asiatische Kunst in Berlin. She also led an investigation on the technical aspect of the artist's work, but by enlarging the focus to Northern Silk Road to make comparison with proper Gandhāra. She proposed very interesting elements to determine local tradition and circulation of knowledge, not only in space but in time. In proper Gandhāra, comparison between different sites are truly informative. That's what Satoshi Naiki showed us, emphasizing particularity of Meran Sanda site inside Gandhāra and the importance of use of stucco for sculpture in this site. He made a very instructive comparison with production made in some material discovered further west in Ada. Work of conservation and of restoration is often occasion to further investigation on objects. When they have been unfortunately broken, we can just a little console ourselves by making observation about the way they have been fabricated. That's the subject of Alejandro Galileo Lopez talked to us about concerning work from Ada that were in Kabul's museum and that were partly reassembled by himself and his team. Dr. Alexandra Van spoke also about Ada's site and presented a very stimulating approach in the way of comparing modeling's future to establish theory and by the way distinguish various sensibility in work of probably distinct artists. Her study led to amazing results regarding spatial distribution of the work and their temporal distribution. After this development about the work of artists and artisans in Gandhāra, Dr. Charlie Leo showed us what extent figured material representation of Buddha's life found its way to Chinese literary works with variation attributed to ancient translation and affiliation with specific Buddhist sects. In particular, we have seen the extent to which the Chinese version of Abhinashkrama Sutra echoes Gandhāra sculpture. Gandhāran representation of religious images have not only influenced Chinese literature, but also grotto sculpture, particularly in Kucha. Dr. Yusheng Shao focused his presentation on very recent discovery from Ada and traced its relation to Central Asia. He explained us a new perspective about different cult that found their place in Gandhāra and traveled to China through Sasanian influence. Like Armadi has described the fantastic artistic center of Bamiyan Valley. He attracted our attention to different mind representation built by various sociological groups confronted to Bamiyan splendor, and the reaction prompted by this mental construction when faced with the unbelievable treasure of humankind. In an ethnological way, he even showed us today how the people of the valley received this heritage. The mental representation we make of objects, the process to evoke a reconstructive abstraction based on preserved material, is in fact fundamental activity in our disciplines. Dr. Michael Rakotozonia, by starting from a single object placed in a network of knowledge, showed us an enlarged representation of the world in which Gandhārian art once developed. He emphasized to which extent in the Indian Ocean was the center of some crossing influences. One of the most striking influences on Gandhāra art is probably the one coming from the West and meeting Indian civilization. ClaireCHESNEAU, speaking about a portrayal of love embodied in Eros, an image of in common sharing, told us of the travel of this figure through the antique world and the transformation he has undergone in different parts of Gandhāran. By determining some characteristics associated with specific sites, she shed light on some choice artists and artisans have made to represent in various materials a universal concept.
Many thanks, Vaidegi and Arnaud, for this comprehensive overview of the fascinating presentation we enjoyed over the last couple of days. So, dear all, before concluding, on the behalf of the organizer, I would like to once again express our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for your precious contribution to the Gandhāran Artist and Artisan Colloquium. Your presence, insights, and active participation have made this event truly impressive, and the diverse range of perspective and expertise shared during the conference has undoubtedly enriched our understanding of the reality of workers' daily life, representations, and aspirations. I hope this fruitful discussion and exchange of ideas could lay the groundwork for future collaborations and advancements in our field. Once more, we would like to convey our immense gratitude to Professor Ducker for his support, outstanding support in orchestrating such an engaging event through the Institute of History, Sociology, Archaeology, and Anthropology of Religion, and without whom its organization would not have been possible. Thank you very much, Professor. A big thank you also goes to the entire team, especially Céline Redar and Ikram Komri, for their tireless efforts and assistance in logistical organization, among other things. It was no mean feat with 16 guests from all over the world. And your hard work and attention to detail have ensured a memorable experience for all involved. Thank you very much. We wish to express once again our sincere thanks to our chairman, which contributed to the smooth running and success of our event, Nicolas Engel and Arnaud Marguier, and more particularly our distinguished professors, Franco and Moperacci, for taking time out of and gratify us with their inestimable leadership and guidance. Many thanks, professors. And of course, we warmly thank all our esteemed international speakers for graciously accepting our invitation, courageously sharing their diverse opinions and views. Some of you come from far and wide to join us, and your participation has truly enhanced the depth and breadth of our conference, making it a rewarding and enlightening experience for all. We deeply appreciate your dedication to expanding our perspectives. We wish to warmly reiterate our gratitude to our dear Professor Tarzi, who had honored us by generously presenting his lecture. And finally, we appreciate the audience for their interest and enthusiastic engagement throughout the conference. I would like to emphasize that the recording of this lecture will be accessible on the Misha YouTube page. Additionally, we are diligently working to promptly publish the proceeding of the colloquium in the Archaeology Argana collection, which will be freely available on Calameo website. We look forward to continuing our collective efforts to foster collaboration and improve our understanding of Gandhāran. Once again, thank you for your contribution and commitments, and we wish you a safe journey home and hope to see you soon. Thank you. And just before we left, I suggest if you had time, if you have not the flight or the train, just after that we can.
Just, I think that I will express the thought of all the participants to express our gratitude to all the team of the organizer, to you, Alexandra, to you, Videgui, to you, Arnaud, and of course, Guillaume Ducker and Céline Redar, because it was a beautiful colloque, wonderfully organized. We are all very well treated. even in between the sessions. And the sessions were, as you said, thanks to you, no bugs with the computers. It is exceptional. And well, in general, and for the humanity and your kindness, thank you very, very much.
Thank
Bravo.
you. Merci beaucoup. Et donc, si je parle en français. If you wish, if you have time, we would like to maybe have a drink together somewhere. I don't know where for now, but yes. In a boat. Yes, we can.
Tu veux y aller? T'as le truc? Il y a ceux-là aussi. Attends. Il y a juste le carton qu'il faut garder. Et on peut...
Ok, where is Alexandra? Alexandra, tu veux annoncer?
Excuse me, for those who are interested in taking a drink, we can meet on the boat. It's the same way the restaurant of the afternoon, of the noon. You can follow the tram, and when you arrive on the water, you can see the boat, and we can meet there at 16. Sorry, 16. Ah, no? 18.
At 6 o'clock, 18 hours. 6 o'clock in the boat, okay?
Sur le bateau. Excusez-moi, c'est un peu...